I'm CK. Tonight we're going to do another Gikfun Kit. This one is probably going to be a little more complicated. It's got a bunch of surface mount LEDs, but I'm sure it'll be fun anyway. Hope you enjoy the video. Just stepping in to set some additional context. This kit is very much a solder practice kit for SMD soldering. It doesn't have much functional use after that. However, it is an excellent SMD practice board and I can recommend it for that. But some of the assumptions I'm making during the upcoming video are around it being functional, and it's not. So watch this as a great SMD practice kit. Here's the bag. And as often is the case, I'm not quite sure which kit this is because I often don't look. I just kind of find them on Amazon, and if they're less than 10 bucks, I just buy it. Let me see if I can peel this UPC off, but I can't. It does say Gikfun Do-It-Yourself SMD SMT with ... LED DIY kit. So let's open the bag, the outer bag. Okay, we got surface mount happening already. We can see it. Get the inner bag open. Huh. Looks like almost everything's surface mount, which is great. It's fun to explore that. So we'll get the circuit board out first, and oh, okay, I was going to say they already have the ICs mounted for you, but they don't. They're taped on. So yeah, they go here and here. That will be fun. Two good size surface mount 4-sided processors, which quite frankly are the hardest. So that will be interesting. And then this is interesting. So it looks like here they're describing the different pitch sizes that you're going to run into when you're surface mounting. So 6, 10, 15, 20, and this is the size in millimeters, the width in millimeters. Here's a millimeter rule. Here's just some random, I think it's just showing you different package types that you might encounter. This is obviously the front of the board where the action is going to be happening. This is a bunch of LEDs. Power comes in here. Some diodes, resistors, a transistor here, and the big processors, some chip or other, I don't know what those are, and a bunch more diodes. Let's see what the piece of paper says. Gikfun actually has some pretty good pieces of paper that come in their kits, except this time it's all in Chinese, which is not the best for me, but the bill of materials shows the part characteristic, the resistors 10K, a 2 meg, and so on, and their locations. Down here, I'm less sanguine about what this means, because these asterisks maybe, I think that's, let me look, yeah, it's 603, 10, 603, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, yeah, so that's 10 of those. So I think this is just saying, and they're asterisks because they're not part of the circuit. I think they're just for you to practice on. Actually, there's two sets of, oh, there are two sets of 603s. So this is all interesting, and the 402s go here. And again, I think this side is simply for solder practice. and this side is where you're actually building stuff. That's why these components are called out on with their actual locations. So let's see what we have. And again, looks like everything is surface mount. Of course, we've got the processor, we've got something here. I think these are capacitors. Yeah, those are capacitors. There's one IC. That looks like a real Texas Instrument one too. Here's a bunch of transistors. Bunch of LEDs. Whole raft of diodes. I think those are resistors, but I wouldn't swear to it yet. I'll have to open it up and take a look. They're very, very tiny though. I'm not sure they go on the front of the board. I think they're for practice on the back. More resistors. Big resistors. LEDs. Resistors. Some little chip or other. Not sure where that's going to go. Oh, it goes right there. Capacitors. Another little bitty chip that goes there. Two of them, in fact. And one more set of resistors. So that's the scoop. Everything is surface mount in this kit. So that will certainly be fun. So let me get the soldering iron heated up, and I think we'll tackle the two large processors first. Now before we get started, as you can tell here, I've moved this camera to a different location because I know that when I start doing surface mount, I always lean in, and I'll probably be getting my head in the shot from overhead, so hopefully this other camera will compensate for that. First, you want some flux. You want some rosin core paste flux. This is from Amazon. I think cost 19 bucks for 50 grams of it, which is going to last a long time. And you'll see how it's used as we go along, but it's critical when you're doing surface mount. Second thing is I'll be using my super thin solder. This is 0.025 diameter and 23 gauge, and it is very thin and the best I've found for me personally for doing surface mount with. And third, find a good tip. This is going to be, I won't say trial and error, but it will be experimentation on your part to find what tip works for you to do surface mount. I like, on my Weller, I like this 30-degree bend, and it's a 0.03 diameter tip. It works for me. Might not work for you, but it's going to be really important that you find a good tip as you're going to be surface mounting. So I'm going to zoom the top camera in so you can see more clearly what I'm doing. Now, here we go. We're going to start with this top processor, and I'm going to go to one solder pad here and put some solder on it. Not doing anything with the flux or other things yet, and it's being a pain. The solder's not flowing there. I got enough solder on it. Next thing we're going to do is get our tweezers, which are critical to this whole operation. The other thing you'll notice is here's the dot and the little truncated corner that you'll see is matched here. The dot and the slightly truncated corner. And what we will do is we're going to get frustrated by the tweezers now. We're going to line up all the little legs, and this is where I get my head in the shot. We're lining up all the little legs with their corresponding solder pads. Now that one leg position where I put the solder, I'm going to heat that leg up, let it cool, and now the chip is pretty much in position. I can tap it a little bit, and it's not, you see it just wiggles a little bit, it's not moving too far. Now I'm going to do one of the legs on this side. To get the chip parked into a position, and I'm going to manipulate it a little bit with the tweezers to get it just right. There we go. There. That's tacked down pretty well. I'm going to get a little bit more solder on it. Actually, I'm not going to get solder on that one. I'm trying to get solder on the soldering iron, and it's going who the heck knows where. I'm going to go over to that. Holy Toledo, hold on a second. I've got to lift this up and look. Yeah, I messed up. I've got three sides right, but this side is way off. I'm going to have to manipulate it some more. I didn't notice that when I was doing it. Got to get the solder off my iron. So I'm going to free this one up again. Oops. Come on, tweezers. This is why you need a variety of tweezers, because I've got to get this off the board. There we go. Now I'm going to have to take this other one up again too, even though it was perfectly in place. And you'll notice as I'm doing this, the slightest touch of the soldering iron to the solder allows you to move the chip. There's plenty. I gotta get this one back again. I think I'm a little cockeyed. I know my head is fully in the shot. I get it. But this is fiddly. Okay, that looks good on that side, looks good on that side, looks good on that side. And I can lock this leg down again. Now, this is me doing this. I'm sure you can find professionals, particular folks who rework computer motherboards and other small electronics, who have much better technique than I do. I'm just showing you how a guy without a lot of expertise does this, just to let you know that if you don't have a lot of expertise, or if you haven't done this a lot, you still can be successful doing surface mount. Yes, watch the other guys on YouTube, because they're very good at it and you can learn from them good things. But watching me do it is like saying, so some amateur can do it too. And that's the kind of feeling I want you to have, because if you've never done surface mount before, you might be kind of scared almost to do it, but you really don't need to. The bottom line is, the worst that's going to happen is you're going to glob a bunch of solder on, or get the chips misaligned, and then you just heat things up and suck the solder back off. So it's not that big a deal. But now I'm going to go, I think the chip is pretty securely on the board. So I'm going to do this bottom row of pins right now, which are actually a little offset still, but I'm not going to fiddle with it anymore because I will mess it up worse. So now I'll take some flux, because what we're doing here is we're putting the flux on here to create a barrier between adjacent solder pads and pins. So when you're actually soldering, the flux is keeping the solder from spreading across. The circuit board material does that too, but the flux just adds so much more protection that you'll find you can be almost careless and solder these up. I'm going to rotate this 90 degrees. Let me make sure it's still in the shot. Yes, it is. And just go across. You can see the flux is getting all fluid, and I think I'm getting these again. This is kind of where you kind of just do it and then come back afterwards and see if you did any bridging. So I'm going to pick this up off the solder block, double check my work. Okay, it looks like all the pins are good, except that one didn't seem to get any solder. I must have missed that. And I think I'm bridged a little bit here. So let me go back in here. Touch that up. Yeah. And then again, I think this is bridged. It's one thing that is a little bit of a challenge with surface mount is you can't necessarily see whether you've got full contact between the leg and the solder pad, and I did. I got a little bit too much solder in this one, so I'm going to heat that up, suck it out. And again, if you're going to do this for real, more than just an occasional surface mount board, you'll want to get a hot air rig with good negative pressure source and all that. I'm still trying to get this solder bead out of there. I'm not happy right now. There it goes. And I didn't bridge anything else along the way. So that's one side done. We only have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 left. Now, one thing you can try to do, and I'm not always successful with this, is just do conductivity between pins with your meter. And I'm not showing any bridging. But what this doesn't tell you is whether you've got good connection between the chip leg and the board. And as you can tell, there's no, since it's not through holes, since there's nothing on the other side of the board, there's no way for you to actually see if you've got a good connection or not. I mean, obviously, getting some solder paste and a heat gun fixes this right up, but that's not what I'm demonstrating here. So let me do one more side with a little commentary, then I'll go into fast motion and do all the rest. See, in some ways,
if you ever look at a manufacturing site for mobile phones, computer motherboards, you'll see that they do a wave solder does almost exactly what I'm doing here. It spreads paste and flux and then just lets the solder just go all globby over it, and it does the right thing. There we go. And I think that one came out really well. I'm a little concerned about those pins there. Let me see if they're... No, they're good. Okay. But I'm not sure they're conductive. That one pin in particular, it looks like it's got a little piece of foreign matter in there. There, now it looks good. Okay. So you've seen me do two sides of the chip. I'll go ahead and do the other three off, or the other ones off camera, because it's hard to see what I'm doing anyway. So we'll just take it as read when I come back on the camera. I soldered these things back up and you'll see it. Both processors are now on the board, or both controller chips are now on the board. And I think I got them all soldered correctly. Making one more pass to see if anything is obviously bridged. That's the main thing I'd be looking for. And it's not. So that was the hardest part. So we'll move on to simpler stuff, and we'll do the two-sided one. There's the pitch is, as you can see, let me flip this over. As you can see on this chip, the legs are a little broader and they're pitched a little bit further apart. So that makes it a teeny tiny bit easier to do. Same drill. I'll put some solder on one pad. Get my tweezers. And this one's a little harder because there's not as much height to tweeze, to grip with the tweezers. So I think I'm going to switch to my other tweezers, my pointy ones. And if you haven't taken a look at my video about tweezers, you can. I talk about different types of tweezers that you're going to find handy, and where you can get them, and why they really are an essential part of your electronic toolbox. There, that looks good. It's a little off. You probably can't see this. I can barely see it. It's a little off on those pads, but I'm not that concerned about it. One thing about doing surface mount, the visor I use, I'll show it over here, I guess. The visor I use as I'm working has one lens in the front, but for this kind of work I flip up the other one and double my magnification, because this stuff is really freaking small. So we've got that leg done, which means we're ready to do the rest of the legs. But I didn't mention this before, even though it can seem kind of obvious, but obvious is not always obvious. When I do my pass at the rest of the legs. I don't do the side that I tacked down, because if I do that, the first thing that'll probably happen is I'll melt the solder on the one leg that I tacked down, shifting the whole chip off, kind of defeating the purpose of what I did. So it's one of those, oh, why don't you think, because I did it wrong first, obviously. That's how you learn good technique sometimes, is to do it wrong first. And when I did it wrong first, I said, oh, you're such an idiot. Why didn't you do the side that you didn't tack down? All the integrated circuits are on. Besides these two that I was doing when I turned the cameras off, there were two more over here that I forgot to mention. This is a counter divider, CD70 something or other. I can't really read it right now. And the other one, I think, I can't see. These chips, by the way, have no part number or labeling on them. In fact, I'm actually thinking about this right now, and I'm not sure that this, I think that this area is the same as the back here. I don't think this actually, let me hold this up. Yeah, this doesn't have anything to do, I'm looking at the traces through my light. Yeah, these are not connected to anything. So, let me see if I can get a shot of this. See, if you look behind, you look right here in the backlit circuit board, those pins are not connected to anything. There's no traces underneath them. So what that does, however, mean is I'm going to be ignoring this side of the board for the rest of this little adventure and just focusing over here, because I decided to look at it when I looked here and said, well, all I see is the 4017. I don't see the other chip. It's because we're not using the other chips. Okay, so the next thing we're going to approach is the diodes, because they're right in the center here, and I like to, a surface mount in particular, I like to work center out, because then your soldering iron isn't accidentally banging into stuff on the way. If you've already got something in place, you don't want the soldering iron to get near it. So we will be using 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of these diodes. These are like 4148s, but surface mount packaged. So if I'm going to use 5, I'm going to cut this at the 5 point and save these other 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Save these other diodes in my spare parts bin for later use if I ever need surface mount diodes. So I'm going to peel the packaging off, the little backing on the carrier. Got to be very careful, and I'm going to be dumping them out into this parts bin. And there they go. 5 little diodes. Now there's some similarity in how you approach diodes as you do with the ICs. Well, let me make sure this side camera is back in the right position. It is. Even though diodes, capacitors, and resistors are pretty simple. But we do the same thing. Little dab of solder on one of the pads. And we take our very fine nose tweezers and we note the, hold on. That's not a Schottky diode, that's an LED. So I won't, let me double check that. Yeah, okay, so D12 through D15, that's 12, 13, 14, 15, not D1, that's actually an LED in the center. So we want to do the 4 on the outside. So I got one extra out. And of course we want to make sure we get the polarity right. So black stripe towards the cathode end on the mark, on the silk screen. So, we've got it in our tweezers. Let me reposition slightly. In our tweezers, get it over the pad, reheat the pad, drop it down, and that's one. And you want to, for diodes in particular, you want to be kind of quick, because diodes can be more temperature sensitive than other components. So you want to get in there and get out. Now, some might ask, because I did, I asked myself, well, why don't I just put a little dollop of solder on both pads at the same time and then just hit them, boom, boom. Well, I tried that, and what happens is, particularly for resistors and capacitors, they rock on top of it. They're very unstable, and it ends up not working out at all well. So just do one end to tack it down, and then do your normal soldering in place on the other end. Okay, that's all the diodes of non-light emitting type on the board. Now we're going to do all these resistors, are 48, 50, 49, oh, there's a couple of capacitors in there too. So actually what I'm going to do because it just struck me as a good idea, is I'm going to put my little dollop of solder on all the components while I'm here. So let's see, what will I approach first? I think I'll do these resistors. Let me get all my resistor packages out. Now, how do you know which ones are resistors? Well, you can look at the part numbers, but the easiest thing to do is note that, let me see if I got where are the capacitors? Oh golly, what the heck is that? I don't know if you can see that. That's some awfully tiny resistors. I guess they're for the soldering practice back here. I didn't try that. Those are tiny. I think I wouldn't do that. So the thing I notice when I'm looking for which are resistors and which are my capacitors and which are my LEDs, let me show you. So there's the three types. Let me zoom in. And you'll notice that resistors are black with white numbering on them. Capacitors are kind of beigeish, no numbering on this side, numbering's on the other side. And LEDs, this, if you look on the back of them, there's this green area because the green points out which end is the cathode end and which one's the anode end. And you can also, when you look at it, you can see a little flat plastic with a central dot where the diode itself actually is. That's the 10Ks. And we should have 5 of them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, we'll do the 10K resistors first. And 10K because the part number on the chip is 103, so that's 10 with 3 zeros after it. I'm going to put these resistors in this parts tray and try not to pick up the extra diode that I didn't end up needing. But I can't do anything with it because I'm not going to throw it in my parts bin unprotected. Surface mount diodes in a spare parts bin. They'll be lost in a second. Okay, so the 10Ks will start with R48. Now the way we do this, again, just like the little diodes we just worked with, pick up a resistor, and these are not polarity sensitive, of course, so put them on any old way you manage to pick them up. I'm pausing to say I'm going to put all the components on their single pad and then go back through and solder the other legs. Oh, and by the way, putting away the flux because you don't need it for this kind of work. All the resistors are on, but I have a little problem now. We have 2 capacitors that go in 28 or C28, C27, and here's the package, and there's only one. It was cut close to the edge when they packed this, and looks like the other one fell out, and I have not been able to find it anywhere. That's one challenge with surface mount, is if they get lost, they're lost. And I don't think, because I don't do much surface mount, I don't carry a lot of spare surface mount parts. Okay, we'll see whether that works. I'm sure those caps, even though they're smaller, they'll handle the current that goes through this thing. Now, the final thing is LEDs. Oh no, it's not the final thing. Actually, we've got 3 or 4 resistors. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4 resistors. So I'll put those on. Okay, that's the transistors on. Now, final thing will be the diodes, and let me see, LEDs, I mean. And we've got 4 in here, and we've got a bunch more over here. Let's see if there's a differentiation. Yeah, there is. So 16 through 19, there are 4 of them, so I'm going to assume it's these, and D1 through D11 are these. So same thing. Oh, I'm sorry, it's not the same thing. I want to show you how to identify. Now, when you identify the LEDs, the thing you care about is, of course, the same thing you care about on the silk screening on the board, is where the fat part is, where the cathode is. Now, if you look here, you'll see a cross in green on the back of the LED. The line points to the cathode end. So the flat side is the anode end, the line is the cathode end. Sometimes it's a triangle and the pointy part goes there. If we flip this over, and I didn't flip it over cleanly, then we flip it over cleanly. So there's the back side. And if I flip it over gently, you can also see there's a little bit of green mark on the cathode side. So it's relatively easy. That's almost a standard. Some manufacturers don't do that, but it's almost all of them do. So I'm going to put all these LEDs on the board. All the components are placed with one leg down, so I'm going to go ahead and turn the cameras off, and I'll solder the other halves of the leads. You don't probably care to see that. All the parts are soldered on. Now I'm going to grab one of my little benchtop power supplies. These are from a kit. They're like 20 bucks a piece. I have like 5 or 6 of them. I have a video of assembly of one of these. They're handy. I use them for a lot of things. Now we've got +5, -5, so let's dial up to 5 volts. This rheostat's a little sensitive. I'm sorry, potentiometer is a little sensitive. Now I'm going to alligator clip. I think I can alligator clip on with enough connectivity on these pads. I think conductivity, I mean. Let's see if anything happens when I put this on. That's about all that's happening. It's probably those 2 capacitors are the wrong value to match with the resistance to get this to walk around. In the spirit of you're not having fun if you're not trying stuff, I'm going to take these capacitors off the board. Now, as I said, I don't have any spare surface mount capacitors, but I got boxes and boxes of other capacitors, so I'm going to be real goofy and take 2 104, that's 0.1 microfarad disc caps, and put them on here and see if it even has a chance of working. I'm not particularly sure it does, because these obviously are going to store a lot more energy than those little surface mount packages, but I got nothing to lose. I have a lot of reasons for why I don't think this is going to work, but I'm going to try it anyway. Yeah, it's not even able to charge those up. Let's see what happens when we simply jumper it. Okay, we got our outside ones on. And we're still in the same position we were in before. The center one and the outside ones, it does not seem to want to travel around. Oh well.